Discover 9 spine-chilling and sinister true horror stories from the haunted Appalachian Mountains. Bethany couldn't shake the creeping dread as she parked her car in the gravel driveway of their new home. The old house loomed before her, shrouded in mist like a ghostly sentinel watching over secrets buried deep within the shadowy woods. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a safe haven for her and her son, Jake, but the oppressive air wrapped around them as tightly as a noose. Was it just her imagination, or was there something sinister that clawed just below the surface? Once settled inside, strange occurrences rattled her nerves. The floorboards creaked, echoing sounds that seemed painfully human, like whispers haunting the corners of her home. And those eyes, Jake's innocent blue ones, shone with an unsettling light whenever he mentioned his new friend, Andy. "He told me a fun game to play," Jake chirped with an almost eerie enthusiasm. Bethany's heart raced. She remembered reading about children and their imaginary friends, but this felt different. Something in her gut twisted like a knife, making her cling tighter to her resolve to protect her son. Town. Everyone wore polite smiles, yet their gazes flitted away too quickly whenever she mentioned needing help. One woman, Clara, stood out. Like a flickering flame in the oppressive darkness, she seemed unbothered by the whispers of the townsfolk, her voice soothing. "Families here are like branches on a tree, dear," Clara said, but the way she said it felt heavy. It wasn't until Bethany dug deeper into Clara's stories that she stumbled upon true horror. The name she learned was attached to a disappearance, one that hung like a cloud over Briar Hollow. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One stormy night, thunder rumbled violently overhead, and lightning illuminated the thick trees beyond their backyard. Bethany jolted awake, her heart pounding like a war drum, only to find Jake standing in the eerie glow, mumbling something inaudible. "Jake!" she gasped, rushing to his side. "What are you doing?" Fear clutched at her throat. He looked up, his eyes wide and filled with something ancient, a kind of fear that no child should possess. "Andy says I have to go outside." The shadows from the trees crept closer to the house, their darkness extending like icy fingers. Bethany's mind reeled, weighing her options against the desperation radiating from Jake. She sensed danger tightening the air around them, wrapping them in its grasp. Whispers that sounded like chanting reached her ears, echoing sinister secrets. The branch that had scratched against the window felt more like a warning. As reality twisted around her, she realized it wasn't just the town's history that was haunted but her very own future. Clara's ties weren't just neighborly, they bound mothers and children alike with whispers that lured children into the forest, into a world no one returned from. Panic surged within her, heart racing as she glanced toward the door, torn between the instinct to flee and the cold grip of terror holding her son captive mentally, as his eyes flickered to the tree-line. The storm soaked Briar Hollow in a shroud of chaos and rage, while shadows danced just beyond her reach. The air vibrated with an unspoken threat, leaving Bethany wondering, could she save Jake before it was too late? A sudden crash from the forest shattered the silence, and her breath hitched. The darkness was coming for them, and she had to unveil the twisted secrets hidden in the shadows before they all became a part of Briar Hollow's chilling history. The night stretched on, oppressive and heavy like a thick fog smothering the last flickers of light. Bethany felt as if the house itself was breathing, each creak of the wood beneath her feet a warning. Her heart raced, a relentless drum echoing in her ears as she turned once more to face Jake, who stood seemingly entranced. "Jake!" she urged, desperate. The shadows outside seemed almost alive now, writhing in the light of the occasional flash of lightning. "You can't go outside. It's dangerous." But he didn't move, his gaze still locked on the dark woods, a faraway smile forming on his lips. "Andy says it's a fun game, Mommy. He said we'll have adventures." Panicking, Bethany gripped his shoulders, trying to break whatever spell had taken hold of him. "Listen to me, Jake. We need to stay inside. Please, you have to come back to me." For a moment, her words seemed to pierce through the fog. Jake blinked, confusion flickering in his eyes as if he were emerging from a deep, dark pool. "But what's wrong?" Before she could reply, another crash erupted from the forest, and the front door rattled violently, sending a wave of terror through her. The shadows outside darkened, swirling, as if something monstrous was lurking just beyond her sight. Without thinking, she pulled Jake close, instinctively shielding him. "We need to lock the door." But her instincts twisted in her gut, part of her urged her to run, to flee this cursed place. Her pulse thundered as she stumbled to the door, relief flooding through her when she heard the latch catch. "We'll be all right," she whispered, more to herself than to her son. Then came a soft tapping on the window. The sound was rhythmic, almost playful, like children at play. A chill raced down Bethany's spine. She peered through the rain-slicked glass and gasped. There, almost hidden in the shadows, stood a figure, a small shape with an unsettling familiarity. "Mommy! It's Andy!" Jake squealed, his excitement rising. "No!" The word escaped her lips like a plea. "I don't want to see him. He's not your friend." Jake wriggled free from her grasp, his tiny hands reaching for the doorknob. "But Mommy, he wants to play." The urgency of the situation gripped her. She had to act fast. "Jake, listen to me. We have to run. We need to find a way out of here." But as she turned toward the back of the house, a cold wind howled through the cracks of the windows, snatching the warmth from her skin. Her resolve faltered as her gaze darted back to the front window. Andy stood there, his dark eyes glowing unnaturally, a twisted grin spreading across his face. "Come out, Jake. We can have so much fun." The voice was sing-song, yet underlined with a sinister edge. "Stay away from him." Bethany screamed, backing away. Her mind raced, piecing together the stories of the townsfolk. How many children had vanished into the woods, lured into the darkness by something unseen? Would her son be next? Jake's innocent voice echoed in her ears. "But he just wants to play no." She yanked him back toward her, heart pounding. "I want to let you." But as she looked out once more, the figure of Andy began to dissolve into the shadows, melting into the night, before suddenly reappearing right outside the door closer than she'd imagined. "Open up, Jake. The fun is just beginning." Ice gripped her heart. All her instincts screamed that whatever waited out there was no mere child. It was something older, something hungry. She realized with dread, the forest wasn't just a dark expanse. It was alive, waiting. The walls around her began to thrum with an ominous energy, leaving her gasping as the air thickened. When a bone-chilling whisper slithered through the house, she understood it was a beckoning, pulling her closer to the brink of madness. With Jake still holding firm to her hand, she backed away, her breath quickening. Could she fight off whatever was stalking them? And when the ground itself began to tremble underfoot, Bethany knew time was running out. "What have you brought upon us, little one?" A voice hissed from the walls. "You've awakened the ancient spirits." In that moment, she understood the severity of their situation. They could either succumb to the haunting whispers or fight against the darkness that sought to drag them both under. But as her courage faltered, another clawing sound echoed from the depths outside. Something was coming for them, something with a taste for fear. Would they succumb before dawn broke, or could she find a flicker of hope in the face of despair? Bethany's breath hitched in her throat as the sinister realization hung heavily in the air. The true game was beginning. The pounding of her heart echoed in the stillness, drowning out the whispering shadows. Bethany felt Jake's small hand trembling in hers. She glanced down at him, his innocent eyes wide and confused, unaware of the sickening dread that churned in her stomach. Time stretched, each second feeling like an eternity as the air thickened with malevolence. "Mommy, I want to see Andy," he whined, the soft plea piercing through the tension. "No. You'll stay with me." Panic surged as she hurried Jake to the dining room, the only room with a sturdy lock. Yet fear clawed at her insides. What if she was too late? As they reached the door, another harsh knock resounded like thunder, rattling the old frame, the sound promising ruin. "Let him in, Jake. Let him in. We'll have so much fun." The sing-song voice was back, louder now, slithering through the woodwork. Bethany's breath quickened. She squeezed the lock tight with one hand while using the other to push Jake behind her. "Stay close to me," she whispered fiercely. Just as she steadied her grip, her resolve almost rippling through the fear that surrounded them, the windows rattled violently. "Mommy, it's cold," Jake cried, shivering against her. "No, no." She felt the weight of despair as the icy draft coiled around her ankles, creeping up like a predator laying claim. The walls began to pulse with low, echoing laughter, a sound filled with malice, and the shadows danced like puppets at the mercy of an unseen master. Something was deep inside the house, something far worse than losing her son. She could feel it, a presence, lurking just out of sight, waiting for a moment of weakness. "Mommy, I want to play." "Jake, don't." The plea was frantic. The light was fading, and so were her options. The wood of the door loomed heavy, barricading their fragile sanctuary against what waited outside. "Let him out." The voice hissed again, now coming from every crevice. "He's just a child, he belongs with us." In a moment of desperation, she pressed her palms against the door, feeling its vibrations as more knocks resounded, powerful and insistent. What was left of her sanity was fraying. She had to think. "Jake, we need to find something to defend ourselves." Her voice trembled, but she pushed through, the instinct to protect him burned in her chest, the fight or flight response screaming at her. "But Andy, no!" she shouted, the single word echoing like gunfire in the fragile stillness. She grabbed Jake's shoulders, looking him square in the eyes. "We are not going to play with Andy." Yet, as she looked into his eyes, she saw something shift. The innocence faded, replaced by a hollow vacancy that should never be in a child. "Mommy, I don't feel good," he murmured, his voice thin, almost airy. Suddenly, the trembling of the ground intensified, causing the house to sway. Beneath them, the floorboards creaked as if a great weight pressed down from below. The walls whispered louder, a cacophony of enticing promises began to unravel her thoughts. "Let us take him," the voice sang sweetly again. "He'll be fine. We'll all be fine." A primal fear gripped her heart like icy fingers. She turned, staring not just at Jake but the door, convinced it had some life of its own. The whispers became a chorus, drawing her in, inching closer to temptation. Was she imagining it now? The walls seemed to pulse, breathing in tandem with their fearful hearts. Just then, there came a loud crash from the back of the house. Something large had burst through, breaking the stillness. "Mommy, what's that?" Jake's small voice was now small and quivering. Bethany's mind raced, fighting against the rising tide of terror. "Stay by me, Jake." She hadn't faced whatever was out there yet, and fear flooded her senses. Would it be the woods that took her son, or had they drawn something even more sinister into their home? With every heartbeat, she realized help was nowhere in sight. And from within the shadows, a soft laugh echoed again. "The game isn't over yet, Bethany. We're just getting started." A frigid chill wrapped around them, and she knew, deep down, she was out of time. The game was on, and the stakes had risen. What lay beyond the door was more than a game, it was a hunter, and they were the prey. With the howls of darkness closing in, she had to decide, stay and confront the horror or run and risk losing Jake forever. What would she choose? The air grew heavy, thick with dread that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. Bethany's eyes flicked to the back door, the sound of splintering wood echoing in her ears. Something had entered their sanctuary, something large and malevolent. The pounding of her heart drowned out the whispers, but the urgency of her situation clawed at her mind. "Mommy, I don't want to be here," Jake whimpered, his voice trembling. She could feel the icy grip of fear creeping up her spine, threatening to snap her resolve. "Shoo." She placed a finger over her lips, willing herself to calm him. "We're going to be okay. Just stay close." But Jake's wide eyes stared at something beyond her. She turned slowly, and a shadow flashed through the doorway. She shuddered. It was too dark to see clearly, but she felt its presence, a weight on her chest that squeezed the breath from her lungs. From the depths of the house, there came another sound, an unsettling scrape, like fingernails on wood. She blinked, trying to shake off the images flooding her mind of the thing lurking, waiting to claim what it desired. "Jake, we need to go upstairs," she insisted, panic lacing her tone as she grabbed his small hand. "Now." She pulled him toward the staircase, the rough wooden steps creaking under their weight. As they reached the second floor, Bethany quickly forced her way into the small bedroom at the end of the hall and locked the door behind them. The room was dim, the only light coming from a street lamp outside that barely managed to cast a faint glow. "What is happening, Mommy?" Jake asked, his small body trembling. She knelt in front of him, clutching his shoulders. "Listen to me, Jake. We have to stay quiet. No matter what happens, don't make a sound." His eyes filled with tears, mirroring the fear that twisted within her. She stole a glance at the door. The laughter that crept from the shadows below seemed so alive, it echoed through the house, taunting her. Then, as if sensing their refuge, the voice returned, slithering through the cracks. "It's no use hiding, Bethany, let him come play with us, we can have so much fun." The words lured her, a twisted promise that clung to her thoughts like poison. "Jake, I need you to listen," she pleaded. "We can't give in. We can't let it win." Suddenly, the floorboards groaned beneath them. The whole house felt like it was shifting, a heavy presence pushing against the walls, smashing against the door. Jake shrank back against the wall, his small frame becoming smaller still, swallowing his fear in silence. Then the howling returned, louder now. The sound seemed to swell, wrapping around them, squeezing the air from her lungs. Bethany pressed her palms against her ears, but nothing could block it out. "Mommy." Jake's voice broke through her haze. "I feel funny." The innocence in his tone struck her like a blow. She opened her eyes to see him staring blankly at the ceiling, a vacant look replacing the fear that had once held him captive. "Jake?" He turned slowly to her, a chilling smile stretching across his face. "I want to play with Andy, I want to have fun." Her stomach twisted in agony. The thing inside him, it was changing him. "No, Jake. You have to fight it." But her desperate pleas felt empty against the weight of the shadows that pressed in closer. Then she heard it again, the crash from downstairs. Loud, decisive, and closing in. "What the hell is happening?" she whispered, feeling the tears pool in her eyes. There was no escape from this nightmare. The game was relentless, and she was losing. The shadows thickened, pressing against her, breathing down her neck. From the depths of darkness, laughter erupted, vicious and mocking. "Just let go, Bethany, just let go." How could she save her son when there was nowhere left to run? Then, with one final rattling crash, the door shuddered as if something powerful had come to take what was owed. Bethany's heart raced. She stood tall, fueled by sheer survival instinct. She reached for anything nearby, trying to summon courage to face what lay beyond that door. She was out of options, and that voice, that sinister, slithering voice, was right. She needed to decide, would she let it take her son? With her heart pounding in her ears, she took a breath, knowing the worst was yet to come. Would she confront the darkness, or would she surrender to fear, the grasp of destiny tightened around her, leaving her with only one choice. Would she dare to unlock the door and face the horror waiting beyond it? The door rattled again, each thud like a drumbeat of dread that echoed in the cramped room. Bethany's grip tightened on the doorknob, her knuckles white. How much longer could she hold it? "Mommy, I want to go to Andy." Jake's voice had morphed from fear to a creepy calmness, as if the shadows whispered secrets only he could hear. "Jake!" she snapped, panic coloring her voice. "You can't go anywhere. Stay with me." Her words seemed to dissolve in the air. Everything she loved was slipping through her fingers like sand. The laughter grew louder, enveloping them. It was a chorus of twisted joy, a malevolent invitation that clawed at her mind. Bethany's pulse quickened. She knew deep down that she had to take a stand, to fight not just for her son, but for herself. With one last desperate breath, she turned the knob, splitting the air between them. The door swung open with a primal creak, revealing the corridor stretched out like the gaping maw of a predatory beast. Shadows swirled, writhing and alive, coiling against the walls as if it were breathing, waiting for her next move. The one source of light flickered. She felt it, the cold breath of the thing right behind her, wandering, searching. "Mommy," Jake called softly, his voice barely a whisper now. "It's scary, then let us be brave together," Bethany whispered back, steeling herself. Holding his hand tight, she stepped forward. They passed through the doorway into a world where darkness had taken over the familiar, moment by moment, piece by agonizing piece. "Where are we going?" Jake asked, confusion lacing his innocent tone. "To find a way out," she said, though deep down she trembled at the thought. She pushed through the oppressive air, leading him farther into the living room, their footsteps muffled as if absorbed by the sinister fabric of the house. The laughter now morphed into eerie calls, echoing throughout the house, pulling at her sanity. "Join us, little one. Don't be afraid." It echoed, reverberating in her bones. "Mommy!" Jake screamed suddenly, his little fingers brushing against the back of her leg. His usually bright face twisted into a mask of fear. She jerked around, realizing what had snatched his attention. There, emerging from the shadows in the corner, was a figure, a grotesque imitation of a child, its limbs twisted and its mouth stretched wide in a grin filled with jagged teeth. "Play with me, Jake," it crooned, its voice dripping with malice. "No, no, no!" Bethany screamed, her heart racing like a wild horse. "Jake, we need to go. Now!" She yanked him forward, pulling him away from the twisted creature that was not alive but not dead either. As they backed away, the thing's laughter swelled into monstrous fury, an agonizing sound that vibrated through the very air they breathed. They stumbled backward into the clutter of the living room. Confusion struck as pieces of furniture appeared to change shape in the dim light. The couch turned to a beast, the rug seemed to twist beneath her feet, attempting to ensnare them both. "Mommy, help!" Jake pleaded, his little face damp with tears and terror. Bethany's mind raced. We have to get to the basement." She remembered the old exit that led to the outside, a path many had forgotten. If only they could reach it, escape this hell. She clasped Jake's hand and flew towards the back hallway, knowing the shadow behind them unfurled with every step, hungry for their fear, for their despair. As they crossed the threshold into the basement door, they heard it, a deafening roar that echoed throughout the house. A reminder that the thing they feared was closer than ever, just an inch away from taking everything. Would they make it down the stairs, or would the darkness consume them first? With breath held tight, Bethany threw open the door, plunging them into what felt like a black pit of uncertain horrors. The darkness swallowed them whole. Shadows curled around their ankles, slithering upward towards their knees. Bethany took a step, each creak of the old stairs announcing their descent into the unknown. She could feel Jake trembling beside her, the coldness of his little hand a stark reminder that they were slipping deeper into the abyss. The dim light above began to flicker, threatening to go out completely. "Just a little further," Bethany urged, her voice a mere whisper against the thick silence. But the deeper they went, the heavier the air became, pressing down on her chest like an insistent weight. Suddenly, a sound soft, almost imperceptible. It was the sound of giggling, the kind that sent a shiver racing up her spine. Not just any giggle. The same twisted echo that had taunted them in the living room. "Join us," Jake had called, dripping with malice. "Mommy, I don't like this," Jake whimpered, his voice quivering, filling Bethany with an overwhelming sense of dread. "Keep moving, sweetheart," she urged, determination swirling with panic in her gut. They stumbled down the last few stairs, crashing into the cold, cement floor of the basement. Darkness swirled around them like a living thing, suffocating and oppressive. "What now?" Jake asked, his voice small and frightened. Bethany glanced around, searching for anything familiar to hold on to. The basement held remnants of an old life, dusty boxes stacked haphazardly and rusty tools hanging from the damp walls. It felt as if time had forgotten this place. Then she spotted at the window a small, grimy rectangle near the ceiling, a thin strip of light barely breaking through. Hope flickered in her chest. "We go that way." She pointed. "If we can reach the window, maybe we can get out." But as they turned to move towards it, a heavy thud echoed behind them. It reverberated through the chilly air, and Bethany froze. A mass of darkness swirled in the hallway. The laughter came again, booming and wild, filling every crack and crevice of the basement. "Mommy, please!" Jake cried, his voice rising in pitch. Instinct kicked in. "We can't stay here," Bethany shouted, gripping Jake's hand tightly. She led him back, away from the window, towards the far wall. Every moment felt unreal, as if they were trapped in a nightmare that twisted and tugged at their reality. The thudding grew louder, accompanied by a low growl that sent icy fingers crawling up her spine. They pressed themselves against the wall, the coldness seeping into their skin. And then, silence. An unsettling hush fell, leaving only the heartbeats hammering in their ears. "What happened?" Jake whispered, his big eyes wide, searching for answers. "Just stay close," Bethany hissed, her throat tight. Before she could take another breath, the shadows flickered, and a figure emerged, a grotesque caricature of innocent childhood, the same creature from before. "Jake! Why don't you come play?" Its mouth stretched wider, showing rows of nails instead of teeth. Bethany's instincts screamed for her to flee. "Jake, run!" she shouted, lunging forward. But the basement door slammed shut, sealing them in with the horror that lingered. The warm fear that radiated from Jake turned ice cold against her skin. "Mommy! What do we do?" Jake's voice quivered with desperation. Looking around, Bethany's mind raced. They had to find a way out. She spotted an old wooden door set in the far corner, partially obscured by cobwebs and grime. "That way!" she barked, pulling Jake as she sprinted towards it, the shadows behind them twisting as if they were alive, reaching out with cruel intent. As they reached for the handle, another growl rippled through the air, more menacing now. In that moment, Bethany's heart sank. What if it was already too late? Would this be their last fight against the darkness that sought to consume them whole? With every ounce of strength, she turned the doorknob, and it began to creak open. The door creaked open, revealing a dark passage that seemed to breathe with a life of its own. A rush of stale air pushed against Bethany, smelling of mold and decay. She hesitated, dread coiling tighter around her heart, but there was no choice now. "We have to go, Jake," she urged, her voice shaky yet firm. They plunged into the inky blackness, the door slamming shut behind them with a finality that made her flinch. The silence pressed down like a weight, and her pulse thundered in her ears. Each step carried them deeper into the unknown, the only sound the soft scuffle of their feet on dusty floorboards. "I want to go home," Jake whispered, his voice a tender plea that cut through the oppressive darkness. Bethany squeezed his hand tighter. "I know, sweetheart. We will." But even as she spoke, doubt gnawed at her insides. Where was this going? What awaited them in the unfathomable dark? A flickering light appeared ahead, tempting like a moth. They stepped cautiously toward it, hearts pounding, until they reached what looked like another basement. This one, however, was not empty. Old toys lay scattered everywhere, broken dolls with glassy eyes, a rusted tricycle, and a dusty, deflated beach ball, each one looking like a faded memory, remnants of happier times trapped in decay. Then they heard it again, the giggling. Twisted and mocking, it echoed off the damp walls. It was different now, more sinister, and it felt as if the shadows themselves were alive, resenting their intrusion. "Mommy, I'm scared." Jake whimpered again, clinging to her leg, his eyes wide with terror. Bethany knelt down, pulling him close. I know," she glanced around, desperately searching for an escape. Outside the flickering light, she thought she saw movement out of the corner of her eye. A shadow darted, then vanished. "We need to find a way out of here," she whispered, scanning the room. Suddenly, the door they had just come through rattled violently as if something was trying to force it open. It rattled and banged, and she felt the very foundations of the place tremble. Jake whimpered again, and Bethany's blood ran cold. "Shoo. We need to be quiet," she hissed. They ducked behind a stack of fallen toys, hearts racing, waiting. A gap appeared at the bottom of the doorframe. She could see it now, dark fingers, clawed and elongated, reaching through the crack. They twitched and curled like worms, searching for the warmth of life. Bethany's breath caught in her throat as she pulled Jake closer, praying that they wouldn't be found. The giggles grew louder, coming from all directions, echoing like a taunt. "Come out to play, Jake." "Mommy!" Jake cried, tears spilling down his cheeks. "Not now." She pressed her palm against his mouth, silencing him. Desperation clawed at her throat. She had to take action. With a sudden burst of resolve, she fixed her eyes on a small window pane high on the far wall. The glass was grimy, and she could barely see through it, but it was a way out. "Jake," she whispered urgently, "we're going for that window." But as they moved, the shadows flickered more violently, the laughter piercing as it crescendoed into a nightmarish choir. The door burst open. A mass of darkness surged inside with an unholy howl. "Mommy! Run!" Jake screamed, his small voice breaking as the nightmare spilled into the room. They dashed for the window just as claws scraped the floor behind them. There was no looking back now. Adrenaline surged in her veins as she reached for the window latch, but it wouldn't budge. Hot breath on her neck. She could feel the weight of it, closing in. The room tilted, the shadows swallowing every inch of light. Desperation clawed at her. She had to push the window open, but what if the darkness engulfed them first? Would Jake be lost to it forever? "Please!" She screamed into the void, heart racing. Then a voice, soft but relentless, slithered near her ear. "Join us." In that exact moment, the window shattered, sending shards of glass cascading like rain. The last thing Bethany saw was a figure silhouetted against the fading light, a twisted, childlike form waiting for them in the dark, but what she didn't know was that the shadow was not their only enemy. Bethany gasped, the dread crashing over her like a wave. They had to escape, but at what cost? The shards of glass fell around them, splintering the silence of the basement in a cacophony of tiny, deadly stars. Bethany's heart raced as she pushed Jake towards the escape, her breath hitching in her throat. Shadows lunged from behind, an ink-stained void seeking to capture them, to drag them into the depths of despair. "Climb!" Bethany urged, her voice cracking with panic. She could hear the scratching, clawing behind her, frantically grasping for purchase on the floor as if the darkness itself was alive. Jake scrambled to the window, the jagged edge gleaming ominously. "I can't," he squeaked, eyes wide with fear. "Just do it. We don't have time." She pulled him, panic guiding her movements. Finally, with a surge of strength, Jake hoisted himself up. Bethany shoved him through, the cold air nipping at his skin. She could almost feel the claws behind her, brushing her back with their loathsome touch. Now out. She pushed him, desperate for freedom. But as she turned to climb through, the shadows lunged, merging with the air around her. A cacophony of whispers surrounded her, each voice a torrent of disbelief and rage. "Join us forever," it slithered teasingly, resonating through her bones. With a frenzied push, Bethany wiggled through the window just in time, landing in the damp grass outside. She twisted around, panting hard, only to see the twisted reflection of the basement door. The shadows kept writhing inside, desperately clawing at the light spilling in. "Mommy!" Jake cried, fear saturating his voice, tears glimmering in the dark. He stood a mere few feet from her, gazing at the shadowy handprints now slowly fading from the window ledge. "Quick, we need to run!" she yelled, grabbing Jake's hand as they raced away from the house. The cool night air did little to ease her panic, it only heightened the gnawing dread that their escape was merely beginning. The woods loomed ahead, dark and thick like a living mass of secrets. Each rustle in the underbrush sent chills down her spine. "Stay close," she urged, urging him forward, every instinct screaming that danger lurked just beyond the reach of their trembling flashlight beam. Then came the laughter again, much closer now. It slithered around them, ricocheting off the trees. "Come back, Jake, we want to play." Each snap of a twig raised goosebumps on her skin, that sound echoing louder than her own heartbeat. "Mommy, I don't want to play." Jake sobbed, his voice tearing at her nerves. "Me neither, baby, but we have to keep moving." They stumbled through the trees, eyes darting around the obscured path. But no matter how fast they ran, an unshakable sensation settled over her. Something was following them. She knew it. The whispering, taunting laughter hid behind every tree, tugging at the corners of her mind. "Run faster!" Bethany shouted, adrenaline fueling her legs as she glanced back, half expecting to see the twisted figures emerging from the shadows, but it wasn't just darkness that was chasing them. As the branches bowed and swayed, she saw flashes of pale, ghostly faces materializing between them, eyes wide and empty. "Children! Mommy! Look out!" Jake screamed, pointing ahead. Her eyes widened as she stumbled, nearly tripping over a root that jutted from the earth. An old sign twisted into view, barely hanging on. Its letters faded but still, words clawed for her attention. "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here." Bethany grabbed Jake's hand tighter. "We can't stop. We have to go. We can't let them take us." They dashed deeper into the trees as the laughter crescendoed, the haunting voices swirling around them like an unending nightmare. And then she heard it. Soft, muffled sobbing. It came from a hollow nearby, a faint glimmer of hope cutting through the suffocating terror. "Mommy, is someone there?" Jake whimpered beside her. Maybe they can help us," she hesitated, glancing at Jake's frightened face. Was it safe to go toward the sound? Could they trust it? As she moved them closer, shadows danced around the hollow's mouth, and the voices grew louder. Join us, Bethany's heart dropped. What awaited them in this darkness that seemed to pulse with sinister intent? They had escaped one nightmare, but what fresh horrors lay ahead? The hollow yawned like a hungry maw, swallowing the faint glow of their flashlight. Bethany felt the panic swell in her throat, choking her. The sobbing grew louder, mingling with that horrifying laughter, merging into a symphony of despair. "Mommy, please," Jake whispered, his tiny hand trembling in hers. "Listen," Bethany urged, scanning the shadows pooling around them. "Maybe they're trapped," she suggested, trying to steady her voice. Yet that pit in her stomach churned with doubt. The hollow beckoned them closer, its depths spilling darkness like ink. Were there really lost souls inside? Or was this just another trick, another way to pull them back into that nightmare? "Stay close, Jake," she whispered, inching forward, her heart pounding as they crossed the threshold of light into the dark. The sobbing morphed into soft pleading, as if the shadows around were drawing out memories of loss, desperation. Help us," the voices wailed, soaked in sorrow. Jake cowered behind her. "I don't want to go in there." She wanted to say they could turn back, but the darkness around them seemed to pulse with an insatiable hunger. "Just a little closer," she urged, dragging them further in. "Maybe we can help them." The hollow was cold, the air thickening with regret. The crying enveloped them, wrapping around their ankles like a rope. She strained to hear, desperate for any clue that this was a rescue mission, not a death trap. "Mommy, what if they're bad?" Jake's voice quavered, tiny and scared. Just then, something scratched at the walls of the hollow, sharp and urgent. "Hurry! Come closer!" A figure loomed just beyond the swirl of darkness, shifting under the weight of shadows. A child, a girl with sunken eyes that glared hungrily out at them. "Help us!" she shouted, but her smile was wrong. There was a wetness to it, a glimmer of something sinister lurking behind those gleaming teeth. Jake clung to Bethany, tugging her back, his face now pale as a ghost. "Mommy, please, I don't like it." "It's okay, sweetheart." But as she said it, doubt crept in. Was this truly a little girl? The shadows danced again, revealing fleeting glimpses of faces that were not just sad but twisted with malevolence. They were reaching out to her now, their hands grasping, pulling at the air like children wanting to be freed, but the wrong kind of children. Suddenly, a screech pierced the air. The hollow quaked as the whispers crescendoed into a wailing storm. "Join us! Join us!" The shadows thickened, reaching for Bethany and Jake, the darkness swirling like a flood. "Run!" she screamed, grabbing Jake's hand. They burst back into the faint light of the forest, adrenaline pumping as they fled from the hollow. But something clung to them, riding on the air like a poisonous fog. Behind them, the echoes of children's laughter twisted into a malevolent chorus. "No! Don't leave us! You're one of us now!" Heart racing, Bethany could feel the fear wrapping around her like a vice, squeezing the breath from her lungs. She dared not glance back, but a dread certainty settled in her stomach. They had escaped one danger, only to stumble into another, and shadows were still with them, extending claws towards their escape. Then, a rustle in the underbrush drew their attention. A figure materialized from the darkness, a flickering light illuminating its form. Was it another lost soul, or something else entirely? "Stop! You can't leave!" The voice crackled like firewood snapping in the night. They froze. What now? In the moonlight, an all-too-familiar laughter echoed behind them. What were they about to face? Bethany's breath quickened as she clutched Jake's tiny hand tighter, her heart racing louder than the thundering laughter behind them. "Run!" she commanded, her voice barely above a whisper, though her fear screamed like the shattering glass they'd left behind. The figure loomed closer, illuminated by the flickers of light around them, and dread twisted in her gut. It wasn't just another shadow, it was a reflection of everything they had escaped, a reminder of their fragility. Jake's small frame shivered beside her, his blue eyes wide with terror. I don't want to go." The shaking child pleaded, surrendering against the weight of their nightmare. "You have to trust me, Jake. We need to keep going." She forced herself to run deeper into the woods, to surge past the remnants of their captivity and the lures of the haunting husk that haunted every corner. "Join us!" The figure from the darkness called after them, the voice layered with echoes of broken laughter and desperate cries. It edged closer, its outline shifting and changing with every step, a grotesque mockery of life that made Bethany's skin crawl. "You can't escape, little ones. You belong with us." Bethany pushed through the branches, whipping at her face, each slap a reminder of the horror they were still fleeing. "Stay with me!" she shouted, keeping her focus forward, desperate to find their way back to safety, back to reality. As they stumbled forward, the laughter intensified, a cacophonous melody threading through the forest. Trees twisted at impossible angles, shadows maliciously spilling out from every crack and crevice as if they conspired against her. "Go faster," she urged, only to glimpse wisps of faces swirling between the trees' lost souls, trapped and tortured, desperate for release. "Mommy," Jake whimpered, exhaustion clawing at his little voice. "I see it. There." A flicker of hope ignited in her chest as she spotted a break in the trees ahead, the edge of the woods. Safety was just past the shadows that knitted together like a suffocating tapestry. She raced, her legs fueled by the sheer unwillingness to lose her child to whatever lay behind. Suddenly, a gust of wind spiraled through the trees, sharp and biting, as if the very forest was awakening against them. The laughter turned into a war cry, pulling at the edges of her sanity. "You can't leave us. We'll find you." With a fierce pull, Bethany turned sharply, her foot snagging on a root, and she tumbled forward, catching herself just before hitting the ground, but Jake was not so lucky. He slipped from her grasp, falling hard against the dirt with a frightened gasp. "Jake!" she screamed, her voice slicing through the thick air, the shadows swarming around them, eager to consume what was vulnerable. "Mommy!" His voice cracked, echoing with desperation. The shadows pulled tighter around him, thick tendrils wrapping around his small frame. Tears blurred her vision as she surged forward, propelled by the primal instinct to protect her child. "No! Get away from him!" She lunged, ripping him free of the suffocating darkness just in time to feel the icy breath of the shadows brush against her back. They scrambled to their feet, hearts racing, the echo of laughter fading momentarily into the distance. "Keep your eyes on me," Bethany urged, pulling him towards the break in the trees. The world beyond pulsed with an unsettling light far brighter than they had seen before. Forcing her legs to obey, they darted toward the opening, but the shadows were relentless, clawing and grasping. Each step felt like running through quicksand, fear choked the very air they breathed. "Not again. You're ours." The dark figure that had chased them now loomed at the edge of the woods, its shape swirling with treachery, glowing softly, alluringly, like a dark flame. "Come back. Adventures await." "No!" Bethany shouted, her heart thundering furiously. "We're not yours. We are not afraid of you." Her words felt like a shield, pushing against the darkness as she pulled Jake even closer. As fear gave way to determination, the light from the town beyond grew brighter, filling the corners with warmth. They emerged into an open field, bright and sprawling, and the moment they crossed its threshold, the shadows recoiled, the laughter diminishing into nothingness. Jake trembled beside her, squeezing her hand tightly. "Are we safe?" His small voice quivered. "We're safe." Bethany knelt down, meeting his gaze with fierce conviction. "As long as we're together." "We beat them, Jake." Her heart beat steadily in her chest. They had crossed the threshold of horror into safety, at least for now. They turned back to the haunted woods, silence enveloped them, the darkness retreating into whispers. The shadowy figures still lingered at the edge, but their power waned in the light of morning breaking beyond the horizon. "We need to go home," she whispered, brushing away the tears that stained her cheeks, her heart filled with gratitude for the simple, unbreakable bond between them. Hand in hand, they walked away from the darkness, the dawning day promising hope, the colors of the morning wrapping around them like a warm blanket. With the memories of horror left behind, Bethany knew this wouldn't be the end of the whispering shadows. They would be remembered, but they would not steal away the precious light they found. As they reached their car, she turned to Jake, looking him deeply in the eyes. "We faced it together, and we will always face whatever comes next together." "Always, Mommy," Jake answered softly, a brave smile breaking through the remnants of fear. The past clung lightly to them like the mist that twisted through the tree branches, but Bethany understood that she would do anything to protect that smile. Together, they would welcome the dawn, letting the darkness recede further behind. It was time to drive away from Briar Hollow, to embrace the sweet, unyielding normalcy of life. As they pulled away, she cast one last glance in the rearview mirror, watching the house disappear. The whispers faded not without promise. Perhaps darkness could be washed away, but never truly vanquished. But now, with hope rekindled in her heart, she had no doubt, they could conquer anything together. And so they left bound by light, love, and the promise of new adventures to come. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the chills coming. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from true fans like you. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Show your support now.